I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You and I go separate ways, 'cause lately I don't feel the way that I used to, that I used to, that I used to, that I used to. You and I go separate ways, 'cause lately I don't feel the way that I used to, that I used to, that I used to, that I used to. I don't mean to try to make you mad at me, but ever since you left me, that was something I was glad to see. 'Cause now I'm moving up and you've been stuck inside the old me. If you see me, act like you don't know me, 'cause I don't fuck with you no more. I hope that's clear for you, my dear, but I'm good now. Hope you are too, with that burnout that you fled to. You and I go separate ways, 'cause lately I don't feel the way that I used to, that I used to, that I used to, that I used to. You and I go separate ways, 'cause lately I don't feel the way that I used to, that I used to, that I used to, that I used to. I'm feeling high when I'm low. I need it more when you're close to me, close to me. I'm feeling high when I'm low. I need it more when you're close to me, close to me. I'm broken when you're not around. Unspoken words I'm screaming out. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Now. Hold tight, I'll be here with you all night. Oh no, 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 my mind getting lost in your eyes. No, 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 no. I'm feeling high when I'm low, low, low. I'm feeling high when I'm low. I need it more when you're close to me, close to me. I'm broken when you're not around. Unspoken words I'm screaming out. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another podcast brought to you by TheAutoJunkies. Utah, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing really good. Ready for another episode.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. We are talking about the Chevrolet Camaro today. From what I understand, from what we've talked about before, and in a couple of your streams, you've mentioned it. You yourself have owned a Camaro, right?
I definitely did. Yeah. Last couple episodes I have actually had a car from both episodes. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it.
I actually had a third generation Camaro that was from 1986. Unfortunately, it wasn't one of the cool models. It was a 2.8 liter V6, so it wasn't any of the good engine packages. But it was in excellent condition, both body, chassis, drivetrain wise. It was very clean, and it was a cool car. It just didn't have any horsepower to do anything with, unfortunately.
Well, it's still cool. I myself had one that had a 2.8 V6 in it. Like you said, it didn't have a lot of power, but it's still a nice car.
Yeah, it was a really very nice car. The interiors were very ahead of their time. I feel like for the 80s,
hmm
especially the early to mid 80s, I feel like they had interiors locked.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I myself have owned a couple of different Camaros. I've owned a 71 RS, a 79 Z28. I've owned an 89 RS, and then an 89. Uh, Another 89 Camaro that had the 305. Um, so the 189 had the 2.8, and then the other one had the 305 in it. That one was an 86 or 87, the TBI engine in it. And I definitely got to say my favorite one that I've ever owned had to have been my 79 Z28 Camaro. That one was definitely the best one I've ever owned. And I'm probably going to get a bunch of crap from people for choosing that one over that 71. But the 79 just for me was the one that got away, I guess you could say. Um, this episode is definitely going to be close to the heart for me because the Camaro is my favorite car. It is my dream car. The 69 Yenko is my dream car. So this one is definitely going to be close to me and a little sentimental there. So in our generations here, we have 6 generations. We've got our first gen, that's 67 to 69. Our second gen is 70 to 81. Our third gen is 82 to 92. Our fourth gen is 93 to 02. Then fifth, some people will argue this, but 2010 to 2015 is the fifth gen, and sixth gen is 2016 to present. We're currently in the sixth generation of Camaro. And the one Utah is saying that he has owned is this guy right here. Now, it wasn't an IROC like this one is, but this is a third gen right there.
Unfortunately, it wasn't an IROC. I wish that it was, but it was still really fun. It was a cool car to have. It was a good experience in the car world.
The ones that I have owned are these two. Of course, you're not going to see the body style of the 79 in this picture, But this is I want to say this one right here is a 72 split bumper. I want to say it's the SS, but I could be wrong. It could be the RS. And this is a 3rd gen IROC, which I would really love to own an IROC. And we've actually got a video for you guys today about the IROC that kind of goes into it. The 1st gen was something special. Starting in '67, they really wanted to go against the Mustang. I mean, they had the Chevelle and the Nova already, the Impala. They wanted something that could be similar in, I guess, classification to the Mustang. So they came out with this. They came out with the coupe. They had it in hardtop and convertible. And you could get it with a straight 6-cylinder engine or a V8. And of course, some more popular ones were the V8s. This picture right here has the 69 Z28, kind of goes over some of the things that it had on there. Here we have the trims and engines. I'm going to let Utah cover those a little bit here for you guys.
Okay, so the coolest thing about the earlier gen Camaros was they had so many really cool packages that they actually offered. It was actually, if I were being 100% honest, for the time, I feel like it was the best value that you could find from a car manufacturer at the time. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, this includes European car manufacturers as well, because they offered so many different drivetrain and engine packages for the vehicle, that you could legitimately build it to your own specification. If you wanted to build it to be like a race car, you wanted it to be fast, you could build it with the biggest motor and best specs that they had. Or if you didn't want it to be that way and you wanted it to be a little bit more low key, then you could have a smaller engine, as small as a 3.8 liter. That was a blinding 117 horsepower. But they went all the way from an inline 6, just like a lot of other American manufacturers had. Low horsepower, low torque. It was probably still noisy. They even offered a step up from that with a 4.1 liter inline 6.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a considerable jump in power with just a little bit larger, probably more thought out engine. From the 3.8 to the 4.1 went from 117 on the horsepower side to 155. But the part that I want to point out about that is the horsepower to torque ratio in these motors that Chevy was building at the time was pretty good. It was actually top of the game, actually, if we're looking at it between the 3 big names in the United States, Ford, Chevrolet, and Chrysler. Chevy definitely had the numbers game on lock when it came down to it. I mean, their 4.1 liter was 155 horsepower at 235 pound of delicious torques.
Oh yeah.
So that's a pretty solid number difference between horsepower and torque, and so those little bad boys still moved.
Mm-hmm.
So step up from there was their 5 liter V8, which for some reason had around the same horsepower specifications as their 4.1 did, depending on what it was that their 5 liter actually had. I mean, realistically, you could have anywhere between 130 and 200 horsepower. I'm not sure what exactly it is that they had to change to get the numbers that they were looking for, but I think it had something to do with whatever package it was that the engine was coming from. I imagine there was different components that were used to achieve those numbers. But you could have a 5-liter that varied in both horsepower and torque.
And
The
it
same
also...
thing went for their...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the same thing went for their 5.7 liter V8 at the time as well, depending on what it was package-wise, possibly.
Yeah, it also depended on the year, too, because varying on the year, you had different horsepower numbers.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. But the main packages that were offered for the 69 Camaro for the Generation 1, they did technically still offer both the 3.8 and the 4.1 that they offered in the later years, as well as the 5-liter that varied in power. There's just not any real specifications as to what made the horsepower difference in those motors for the first gen. For the second generation, they offered the same engine packages as well. Well, maybe not the same, but very similar ones, but they had differences that you could actually see on your build list. So the basic motors that they offered for the first gen were the 3.8. You could opt in for Chevy's 4.1, but it wasn't one of their technically standard that was on the build sheet. You could request it. It was available at the time, but it wasn't very widely used. Their baseline, their 5-liter, was the 290 horsepower version for the first gen. And then moving up from there, their 5.4 was the 270 horsepower, which was their famous 327. Now, Chevy's got their engine packages lined up with iconic cubic inch numbers, and Chevy's been well known for that since the very first pony car they offered, which is the Camaro Z28. So they had their 305 was the 5-liter, 327 was their 5.4, their 5.7, which is one of the most iconic motors on the planet, regardless of what continent you're on. It's the 5.7 liter 350.
Yeah.
And that bad boy churned out 295 horse at 380 galloping delicious foot-pounds of torques. And that was nothing to snort at the time.
No.
Because for the power-to-weight ratio that the Camaro offered you with a 5.7 was the mid-ground of what I consider muscle car perfection with the first-gen Camaro. It was the perfect balance between sporting and handling and something that didn't, at the time, use a metric bleep ton of gas. It still used quite a bit, mind you, but not nearly as much as Chevy's 6.5, which was their 396, and their 7-liter, which was the sweet, delicious 427. So I think the mid-ground 5.7 is not only the most popular choice that they sold for the first gen and moving forward, but also it was, I think, their prize balance point with all of their different vehicles that they offered over the years, including to today.
Fun fact about the 327 is that it was actually used in NASCAR for a little while because it could rev up so high and keep that power band up there. They used it and they put in a specific kit, a specific crank and rod kit to make it go even higher in the RPMs. I believe it could go up to 6,500 or 7,000 RPMs stock. Which,
Lordy.
if you know anything about these cars, 5,200 RPM was pushing it, like to as far as it could go. So for the 327 to be able to do that stock was amazing. They put in, I think, like a non-directional or something kit that made it be able to rev up to almost 10,000 RPM.
At the time, like you said, that's incredible to have that high revving of a motor without really putting extraordinary amounts of stress on the internal components.
Yep.
But I think wasn't the 327, that one was popular with the sporting and NASCAR because of the amount of compression that the motor could both produce and handle. Is that correct, or
It's
is
a
that
high compression motor.
gotcha? Gotcha.
That's another reason why they loved it. Other than being able to go to high RPMs, it was high compression. I believe it was 10 to 1 or 11 to 1 compression ratio, which at the time
Ooh.
was like up there.
That's so crazy. That's crazy to think that the compression in a motor that's that old, that was used for sport, was that high. Because even for today's standards, with a lot of sporting motors, I mean, that ranks up there still with them. I mean, that still hangs with them to this day. With like high compression builds on other sport motors, including things as goofy as the Boxer motor that they do high compression builds on for sport, and some of the more well-known inline 6-cylinder motors that they do high compression builds for sporting. That 5.4 liter 327 would still hang with them today.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Let's see. So the 5.7 was also one of those base engines along with a 5-liter V8. So the 350 you could get in almost any of the first gens. The 396 was almost exclusive to the SS, but the 427 you found in the Yanko. And the Copo had, I think you could opt in for the 396 or a decently built up 327 for that guy. And our trims that we had were the base, the RS, the SS, the Z28, the Yinko, the Copo. That's not including all the sub trims as well. Like you had the RS, SS, there was another version of the SS I can't remember off the top of my head. And these are ones where they would kind of bring different exterior packages from one trim to the other and mesh them together. So the RSSS, you'd get the SS emblems, but you'd get the RS hideaway headlights and a couple other things in the 69 at least. So there was a bunch of different sub packages you could get with those as well. We have some videos here for the 69. I have a commercial, or for the first gen, I have a commercial, we have an auction video, and then a scene from Too Fast, Too Furious. Now with this scene, we're going to play the beginning part where he kind of talks a little bit about the Yanko, Paul Walker does, and what it can do, and that's kind of important. And then we're going to watch the race between the Evo and the Yanko. So let's jump to this commercial here real quick. Let's see if it'll play here. Where's the music? Oh, hold on. That's my goof up. I know what I did wrong here.
There may be things more exciting than the
Okay, I'm going to play this for you guys too on my side as well. So for those of you who are hanging out, I'm going to play this as well for you guys to be able to check out. I love these vintage commercials.
Variable ratio power steering and hidden headlights. Camaro
They always crack me up.
No other Sportster at its price does. And if there's anything that hugs better than Camaro hugs the road, you can't drive it. But we must admit, There are a few things sportier
Okay, yeah,
than this
I'm ready to
Camaro,
rock and roll. So for
and
those of you guys who are
Chevrolet
chilling in
makes them
chat,
all,
we are
including
about
the
to
Corvette.
let her rip.
As for those
Tater
things
chip.
more exciting than the '69
Check out
Camaro,
this old school
Camaro
Generation
helps you
1
find them.
Camaro.
At Chevrolet, we believe putting you
Advert.
first means many things.
Alright guys, this is just playing over on Utah's side right now. He started it a little bit after me. So I'm just letting it finish up on his side so we can get to the next video, that auction video. You're going to see how much the Yanko can sell for in auction. And this was a little bit ago when this auction was done, so you're going to be surprised to see how much it sold for at the time.
Okay, that was pretty sweet. I dig those retro commercials.
Right. Those retro commercials just, they crack me up, dude. Oh,
Every
Had this
time.
idea of the perfect life.
we got a YouTube commercial before
They
we
were
can
just
play
so
the next
sincere,
one.
I feel like.
They were. I'm not gonna say they weren't, because they definitely were. So we've got this auction video here. They kind of did a little segment on the auto auction saying, "What's my car worth?" And this is of a '69 Yanko. Utah, I don't know if you're getting that pulled up, but I have it pulled up on my side, ready to play.
Yep, I'm ready to go.
You know, Keith and Mark, if I just called this a 1969 Camaro, I'd be totally wrong. It's a 1969 Yanko Camaro, and that one word could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars on the auction block.
That is correct.
Rare car. I mean, how many did they make?
About 201.
You know, I have never driven one before, but I have to ask you, Mark, I drove this car and I was expecting my eyeballs to get pushed out through the back of my head, but it really didn't seem to have a lot of grunt at low RPM.
Well, you didn't step on the gas pedal hard enough.
Oh, really?
You know, Keith, I mean, these big blocks, they come alive about 3,500 RPMs, and I know you didn't get it up that far. And you get her up around $5,000, it will.
You know, I did get a chance to look at this car. It really is beautiful. The panel fit matches up everywhere. There was really no overspray. The inside, impeccable. I mean, this is easy. Obviously, the condition on this, guys, is a 1.
Collectability. Well, let's think. 201 built, 427. It's an A. Okay. Now let's talk money. This car is going home with somebody else.
Yes, it is.
Big risk to bring this car here. I think you're a little nervous, right?
A little.
Okay. Where is that number going to stop?
My gut feeling is around $375,000.
Oh man, Mark, I think you're misreading the market. I think this is a $250,000 car.
Oh, ouch. That hurts. That hurts a lot. Keith's estimate, ouch. I think he's way light. Way, way, way light. These cars have been bouncing around the number that I spit out for quite a while now, so I think there's going to be a lot of activity when this car comes up on the auction block.
1969 Chevrolet Camaro Yanko. Certificate of authenticity. It's got the high performance L72 427. Real deal Yanko. In fact, it was in the first group of 50 ordered and received. And had to get down 200,000, not it. ATT 10, 10, 10, not about to get down to 10, 10, 10, and 10, and 10, and 20, 20, 20, not about to get down 10, get down 20, on him, had to get down 10, get down 20, a 220, 30, a 230, come along at 230, on him, had to get down 230, 40, on him, had to get down 240 pound, out of roll to the bay, a 240, 50, now you're at a 250 pound, out about to get down 250 pound, all through, a 250,000, not it, a 250 pound, out about to get down 250 pound, last and final call, I'm on the stage, 250 pounds, and not a 250 pounds, and not a 250 pound, and it is. Sold $240,000, Ryan.
The powerful Yanko Camaro was not nearly as strong as market hoped, hammering for $240,000, much closer to our estimate of $250,000.
Oof.
Oof. So it sold for 240 grand at auction.
That's
is
insane
that's a supercar price range right there.
territory. Yeah, 100%. But if I'm being 100,000,000% honest, if it comes down to a $250,000 supercar or a Yanko Camaro, I am buying the Camaro.
Yeah,
Hands down. There's no, in my mind, in my personal semi-professional opinion, I'm going Camaro all the way.
yeah, no, I would too. Um, I'm there's a reason why the '69 Yanko is my dream car. It looks really good, um, and it's just a high collector's item. The value for those are never going to go down. And I'll tell you how much of a dream car it is of mine. I have an OE Yanko badge from a '69 Yanko sitting behind me. And trust me when I say it wasn't cheap to get an OE Yanko badge, but I did it because the Yanko's my dream car and I love them. And then it's sitting in front of me, I have a die-cast car of a '69 Yanko. And one of the first times I've ever seen it on screen was here in Too Fast, Too Furious. But I will explain. I'll tell you guys a little bit about my driving, how it was in a '69 Yanko after this Too Fast, Too Furious scene. I'm gonna play like the first 30 seconds of it, where he talks about
Taco Bell's Nachos Party Pack. Delicious nachos topped with all your favorites. Only at Taco Bell.
Sorry, wouldn't let me mute the ad.
Is it too early to
Are
start?
you kidding me? How many ads? So before we get to him racing, Paul Walker, Brian talks to his buddy here a little bit about what the Yanko can do. And what it can do is very true. Let me just put it that way. I'm going to go ahead and start this so you guys can hear what he says.
This on the black top, huh? Each car does a down and back tag team style. For slips.
Loser walks home.
We came to race. We'll load them up then.
Come on, bro. Let's get these cars. All right, check it out. There's no way we're gonna beat these guys straight up. That Hemi's putting out about 425, and that Yanko snap a speed on about 5 seconds flat. So, I mean, we're gonna have to pull something out of our ass. The only thing I could think of is save the spray for the way back, the return trip.
So right there he says the Yanko will break the Speedo in about 5 seconds. What he means by that is 0 to 60. It did go 0 to 60 at about that quick of a pace. They were no joke. Here at 3 minutes and about 50 seconds is about where the race for the Yanko starts. I'm going to go ahead and play that here for you guys.
All right, Blondie, how does that dust taste?
I don't know.
Come on, Will.
What the? Good move, kid. Let's see if you got the balls. Come on.
So there we had the race between the Yenko and the Evo. And I had realized, I'm sorry, you guys there in chat, I didn't realize the video on my end was a little choppy, so I went ahead and made a change, so it shouldn't be choppy for you guys now, these videos that are playing. Driving a Yenko is nothing compares. And I have sat in and driven a lot of different cars. This Yenko that I got to drive was blue, just like that. It looked just like the Too Fast, Too Furious Yenko. But this car was different because it was built for drag racing. It was built to run 10s in the quarter mile. You could literally pop a wheelie in it. They're very quick, very snappy, very responsive, especially if you get the right, I guess you say, jets and tuning on the carburetor that they came with stock, and tighten up the throttle linkage just a little bit, put it on some tighter springs, it would wake it up. You could sit in a Lamborghini and it'd be like, ooh, fun. This is cool. It's an exotic car. Sitting behind the wheel of a Yenko, nothing can compare. I don't care. For me personally, nothing compares to that moment of when I got to sit in the Yenko, sit in that driver's seat, turn that key, and just hear the cam thumping, hear it rumble. You know, the thunderous sound of that 427 just ringing. For me, nothing compares. Utah, have you been in the seat of a 69 Camaro at all, or a first gen at all?
I have been in a first gen once. It was one time. It was longer than I want to admit. Longer ago than I want to admit. But it was at Rocky Mountain Raceway. Rest in peace. Out here in Utah and Salt Lake, we had well, technically it was West Valley. We had a racetrack. It was an oval as well as a figure eight racetrack that had a two-lane drag strip. It's been in Utah forever, since long before I was ever thought of. It was known as Bonneville Raceway, and eventually was renamed, and then renamed again, and then it was Rocky Mountain Raceway. But we were at a Friday night street legals. And what that was it was an event they would do during the summer and early fall months on Friday nights, where you could bring your street legal vehicle or your pro-tuned race vehicle. But you had to have, if it was a pro-tuned vehicle and did under a certain amount of time, you had to have a cage installed, as well as proper safety equipment, and fuel cutoff, and all that nonsense, all that good stuff. But there was a gentleman there who was a friend of my friend's dad, that had a 1969 Camaro Super Sport. And give me just 1 second here. So if I remember correctly, the Super Sport that he had was the 5.7 liter. So the 350.
Yep.
And it was built to the balls, as some would say. But it was super gnarly. Super gnarly. And we had the opportunity to go on a run with him, because he did multiple laps that night. And so I got to be in the passenger seat with him during a run. And I don't remember what time we ran. I was young enough to have fun and enjoy it, but not old enough to understand what time that it mattered, like what difference the times made. But it was very fast. It was very loud. It was very comfortable. It was probably early junior high, I would say, when this took place.
Okay.
But it was such an experience that I don't even remember what the time was. It was just so much fun. And I got to tell you, the interior itself wasn't completely stripped. I do remember there were no back seats, and it was dynamatted. So it had sound deadening material on the body panels on the interior. But the front seat passenger side was the factory leather bucket, and the driver seat was a Sparco full racing seat with a full harness. So I didn't get the full racing experience at that point, but being able to, I think it was a better experience being in the factory bucket seat.
Yeah.
And just the way that it sounded and the experience from it was just something else. It definitely wasn't a Yanko by any means, but it was a pretty solidly built super sport. And I got to agree with Nordic. I've never sat in my dream car before. I've never been in a 68, 69, or 70 Dodge Charger. But being in that Camaro was something that solidified my love for the American muscle car. Being that young and experiencing something that was that intense was something that I won't ever forget. And I'm glad that it happened in a Camaro, because I'm a Mopar guy deep down to my roots, but I love the American muscle car, and I will always have a big love and special place in my heart for Chevy.
That's awesome. The Yanko that I drove did have the factory Yanko seats, and it still, even with the roll cage and it being a race car, it did have a 4-point harness in it, just like you see in Too Fast, Too Furious, but that's because it was a drag race car. But it did have those factory leather bucket seats with the SYC on the headrest. Those seats are very comfortable. And I might say more comfortable than the Mercedes Benz that I had. And that car was designed to be super comfy, but those buckets I would say were probably more comfortable than that. Genuine leather. I think it was some sort of foam in there, and I'm sure the original buckets had springs. Either way, it was still comfortable. So I will agree with you on that one.
Well, the coolest part about it was the seat that I was sitting in was mint, completely mint. And there was no way that you would look at that seat and you would know that that car was as old as it was, that it came from 1969. It was completely mint. Aside from a few aftermarket gauges that the gentleman had in the dash, and of course, at the time, the giant tachometer was very popular, and he did have one of those that was just to the right of the driver visibility area. So he did have the big old tack with the
shift light.
The shift light, the giant yellow shift light.
Yep.
But everything else, steering wheel on it was OEM. The dashboard was OEM. The front carpeting was OEM. All the way to the shift. The shifter was OEM, and it was just immaculate. The whole thing was immaculate, completely pristine. No cracks on the dash. The carpeting was all nice, solid black. It was very, very nice.
I'm going to be honest here. I'm a little jealous.
It was sweet. It was the one and only first gen I've ever been in my entire life. But it's damn sure not going to be the last, because at some point I will be taking some rides in Nordic's Yanko in the future.
Whether that's a real Yanko or not is
Look, we don't have to tell people that it's a real Yanko or a replica. They don't need to know that. This is all information they don't need to know.
okay. Good point. Because there's only 201 Yankos made.
Yeah, and the however many are near us in our vicinity are probably extraordinarily small amounts.
Yeah, I only know of one, and that's there in Utah. And that's one that I drove. uh,
Oh, I bet that was so cool though, man. Like you're listening to your experience about that and hearing your genuine excitement of being able to have the opportunity to drive that is so it's cool to me to hear because it's just such a genuine experience to be able to drive, sit in, interact with your dream car. Like that's to me being a car person, that's the bee's knees, man. Like
mhm.
I can only imagine the depth of excitement and then the soul crushing oblivion of watching the car leave, knowing that that's not your car. Oh man.
Yeah, and knowing how much those Yankos are worth, I did not want to get on that at all. I didn't want to get on the throttle. I just wanted to cruise just a little bit. I didn't want to mash that pedal to the floor and let it rip.
Nah.
I didn't want to because I knew what that car was capable of, and I didn't want something to go wrong. But when I tell you the owner of it insisted that I do, I mean it. He's like, it's a car. This guy didn't care. He wasn't like big on monetary things, material things. He was like, it's just a car, dude.
Well, I imagine the dude was probably as much of an enthusiast as you are, and probably genuinely wanted you to experience, you know, uh, the skull crushing power of something that's tuned to do tens.
Yeah.
I bet it was. I bet it was wild. I probably wouldn't have. I wouldn't have done it. I maybe would have given it a bit of juice, which I imagine you probably did. But I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have been able to bring myself to mash it because I couldn't. I couldn't bear the possibility of if I couldn't handle the car is something that has that kind of power, and if something were to have happened to it, I'd have been so heartbroken.
Yeah, that's exactly how I was feeling. I was even just cruising at 20 miles an hour in the neighborhood. I was genuinely nervous and shaking because I was like, one, it's my dream car. I'm driving it. Holy crap. And second, it's like, this thing's worth a lot of money. But when he
It's
told
tuned
me,
to do tens. I mean,
yeah,
holy crap, that's a lot of power.
yeah. So at first, it was him driving it to the gas station. I'm like, okay, cool. I just get to sit in it. And he literally mashed it and did a little wheelie in his neighborhood. I was
His
like, oh
neighbors
my God.
probably know him and they're familiar with him. And I mean, I imagine just the sound of the car alone was probably overwhelming. I bet it was really cool.
Yeah, there's just hearing him start it up in his garage and pulling it out was like, it takes you back to a simpler time. It took me back to my childhood of growing up with second gen Camaros with, just full exhaust on them and cams, and just hearing it just sounds thunderous. Just
So
brah,
good.
brah, 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 as he's
Just
pulling
the
out.
idle, I imagine, is so nice.
Yeah, it sounded really good. And then we got to the gas station. He filled it up, and he's like, "Okay, it's your turn. Hop in that driver's seat." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, okay." And even thinking about it now, I'm shaking a little bit because of the experience that it was.
Brings back that adrenaline.
Yeah, it really does. You get on the throttle a little bit, and because of what this car was built to do, even just like quarter throttle, you're burning the tires. But when you mash on it, those tires burned every single gear. It
So
shifted,
good.
tires burn. Shifted again, tires were burning. The car was just absolutely mental and insane, and to think that a stock Yanko could do that as well is mind-boggling because there's not many cars out there that can do that.
Did the gentleman that owned this car, did he have it on semi-slicks or were they on sport tires? Do you remember by chance what
Yeah, they were in
type of
Nitto.
tire they were?
They were Nitto road slicks, so what you would classify as a semi-slick drag radials.
Gotcha. Gosh, and to burn those things, I bet they hook real nicely when they're temped on the track, though.
Oh yeah, I mean he had those on there just for this specific experience. Other than that, he would have full slicks on it with the skinnies up front and big old wide boys in the back.
So good. Absolutely love it. First gen Camaro, ladies and gentlemen. It's iconic. I think, in my opinion, one of the most iconic cars on the face of the planet.
Yeah.
From 1967 through 69. So September of 1966, technically, but
yeah,
they didn't officially do a model year release until 1967. So beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful car. And wonderful experiences as well.
Yes, I can't. The experiences with that car, the only way I'll ever be able to match that experience is to have one of my own.
Someday. Someday, my sweet, sweet friend.
Someday, one day, hopefully soon, I can find
Sooner
myself
rather than later.
one. Yes, sooner rather than later.
The next one, however, though, this is where things start getting really real. Because just based off of your collection that you stated at the beginning of today's episode, this one hits right at home for you.
Yep, this one is where it gets personal.
This is our sweet boy right here. 1970 through 1981. So it had a real long stint. And there's a reason why it was around for 11 years. Boy, I tell you.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Nordic tell you, though, a little bit about our sweet boy, the second gen, because personal experience, ooh, he's got a lot of it.
You're right, I do have a lot of experience with the second gens. Growing up with them, like I had stated a little bit earlier, and then having two of my own. So the second gen really changed in looks. They still kept it a coupe, but they made it longer a little bit. They made it lower and wider than the first gen. You could no longer find convertible Camaros. The closest you could get was T-tops, but that came later. 70 to 73, no T-tops. It was just hardtop all the way, or you could get that vinyl top as an option from the dealer. They liked to call this one more of a driver's car than the first gen, and they actually wanted to call it the road hugger because they made it more based on handling. They went for more of a car that can handle the corners better than the first gen. And as you can see here, this is the 1970 Z28 pictured. The split bumper, very iconic. You can find it in Fast and the Furious as well. They call it the F-Bomb Camaro.
So good.
The one that I owned was an RS, but it was just like this. Red with the black stripes. However, mine did have a cowl hood because originally it was built to be a drag car. But I did have that factory hood sitting on the side for it. Mine originally had the 350, but swapped over to a 400 small block from a G20 sports van. that car was really nice. I'm not gonna lie. The interior was completely OE, so it was like faded. The seats were terrible. Uh, the dashboard was cracked, but it was really nice. They did have the front chin spoilers on them for the Z28s. And then my next second gen that I had was a 79 Z28. It had originally the 4-speed manual, 383 stroker, a lot of power. um, with the rear end gear ratio that I had and the tires and stuff, it could pop a wee little wheelie. I'm talking maybe an inch off the ground, but it was enough to be able to feel that it was lifting off the ground. Growing up, the second gen was big in my family. Almost everybody had a 78 to 81 at some point. Numerous. Plenty of them. Let's just say my parents went through probably about 6 or 7 of them as I was a kid.
Yes, so good.
My uncle had one, which he sold to my parents. And at that point in time, we had 2. So we had a white one that was painted purple, and then my dad's black one. And real quick, Beastman is asking a good question here about this. It wasn't a financial reason, Beastman, why they kept it hardtop, but more or less the fact that it was more rigid and they had more support and handled better as a hardtop than a convertible. But
It's
yeah,
a structure and handling situation that they decided against doing a convertible second gen. Also, they didn't sell a lot of convertible first gens. They found that people wanted more of the performance aspect out of the car rather than the convertible aspect, and so they opted out of it for the second generation Camaro.
yep, exactly. And here we go. We're going into the trims and engines. Utah, I'm going to let you cover this part while I get some water real quick.
Okay, gotcha. I'll gladly take over. So I actually wanted to throw in a little tiny tidbit regarding the second generation Camaro as kind of just a general piece of information. So back in 1971, the ever famous Road and Track magazine, or I guess it was a media outlet at the time that covered the automotive culture worldwide, actually picked the 1971 SS 350 as one of the 10 best cars in the world at the time. So for the United States of America to have a motor vehicle that not only was in a power class but a handling class that would hang with 9 of the other best cars in the world, and I do believe that issue was August of 1971, to be placed in 10 best cars in the world by Road and Track was a really big deal for GM at the time. So with the Camaro, for the second generation, just like the first generation, they offered a ton of different power packages. Now, they did have specific engines for specific trim levels, but they also offered you a build sheet just like some of the other manufacturers like Chrysler did, like Ford did. You could opt in for different engines for specific trim levels as well, but each trim level did come with quote unquote their specific base engine that came with it. So again, just like the first generation, they did give you your 2 different options for the inline 6, both the 3.8 liter and the 4.1. They did drop a little bit of horsepower in the 70s, for these, 117 for the 3.8, 155 for the 4.1. They actually offered the 5-liter V8, which was actually a semi-popular engine that was at the time. I do believe that they featured that one in the RS for the 5-liter, and the 5.7, which is obviously Chevy's most iconic engine that they've ever done. It's known the world over. It's very popular in engine swaps for tons and tons of different vehicles. The 6.5 V8, 396. And then the big boy for the second gen was the 6.6. I do believe that they offered the 7-liter, which is what they offered as the biggest available engine for the first gen, the 427, but it wasn't super common. And if I remember correctly from the information that I've read, it was a very expensive engine to put into the second gen. So it wasn't super common, but I do believe it was an available option.
It was.
So they did offer, in the fun facts, it's at the bottom of this, the 454. Oh yeah, that was the real big boy. That was the big Mama Jamma Happy Slamma that you could put into it. There was a 7.4 liter. You could crawl inside that thing and polish the cylinder walls. You could crawl in through the top. All you'd have to do is split yourself into 4 and slide down the carburetor like 4 jelly snakes, and then just you could go and distribute yourself evenly throughout the motor, and you'd cut your cleaning time in half. The LS6 and LS7, and they were listed on the spec sheets, and some of the brochures. But like the little fun fact says, it didn't make it into the production model of the second generation Camaro, but it did come as an option. And I'm sure that there are somebody out there at some point in time probably opted in for those 454s in the second gen. And if they did, then may the Lord smile upon them for doing such a beautiful thing. Because could you imagine any of the second generation, whether it be 1970, 74, or 81, with a 454 7.4 liter? Just, I bet it's sweet. It blows my mind. But the 402 6.6 liter, that, like I said at the beginning of explaining this, it depended on the trim level that you wanted, and you could opt in for any one of the engines. There were people who used to get called out because they were doing up badging on their vehicles for having like the 3.8 or the 4.1, but they'd be rocking badges that didn't match because of the trim level that they selected for the appearance package and the interior package. So there was probably some cats that went in there and they wanted the 4.1 or the 3.8, but they wanted the Z28 package. So they got the looks, but they had a 3.8. So they probably got laughed out of certain circles, which I don't condone, but you shouldn't be up badging either way. Regardless, don't up badge people. Rock what you have and be true to yourself. So there were people who had, a Z28 that had the 5.7. There were people who had the Z28 that had the 6.5. It just, people mixed and matched, and it wasn't super duper common to see, but it was available from the dealer.
Yep.
So it was something that was available to them, and it definitely makes the car a little bit more rare to find something that has matching numbers for block and chassis. To have, let's say, a Z28 with a 6.6, 402 and a Z28, or any one of the different trim options that were the Berlinetta, the RS, the SS, the Z28, the Yenko, and the Type LT. So the fact that they kept that Yenko, I mean, that's kind of a big deal for the second gen, because they wanted to continue, and it was only for certain model years too. Keep in mind. But the fact that they did continue giving people options to build their cars the way they wanted is part of the reason why Chevy had so much success and so much real life real life relatability for their brand at the time, was because they gave people the options that they wanted, and people enjoyed that. That's why their sales were as good as they were for the first 2 generations of this vehicle, at least up until late 70s ish, early 80s. But the car industry as a whole kind of took a pretty big hit towards the 80s. But Chevy was still kind of top of the game at the time.
Yeah. You're right. They definitely tried to be more relatable than other manufacturers at the time. And they really were doing good for themselves at this time in the second gen. We're gonna move on here. We've got 2 commercials here. We've got the quote road hugger commercial, and then we have another one for the 78. So let's go ahead. Let's pull up this bad boy here. Let's get that out of here. Okay. Utah, let me know when you're ready, and I will press play.
I'm ready to rock and roll, my friend. I'm actually paused at the exact moment that you are.
Oh, that's funny.
All right, here we go, guys. Enjoy this.
Man, this car's a ball to drive. Hugs the road like she's glued there. I mean, you expect it from Corvette, but this Camaro's really a pleasant surprise. New design helps, so do the standard disc brakes and the belted fiberglass tires.
So there's the road hugger commercial. Now let's get into the 78.
Grab Taco Bell's Nachos Party Pack whenever you're dressing up this.
Sorry about the Taco Bell commercial here.
Good old Taco Bell. EFB, thank you for redeeming Schwill time, by the way. I definitely took a drink. Ladies and gentlemen out there, make sure you're staying hydrated. And thank you for tuning in today, by the way. Nordic and I appreciate you dearly.
We do. We appreciate you guys a lot for being here and going through this with us. I'm going to go ahead and start this here.
Ready to rock and roll.
Chevrolet Camaro, the driver's car. A car with a proud tradition. And this year, Camaro is new and redesigned to offer you more driving pleasure than ever before. Whether you choose the popular Sport Coupe with its combination of style and price, the Type LT where the emphasis is on elegance, the Rally Sport with its unique aggressive exterior appearance, or the legendary Z28 with its exclusive ride and handling components and a look that says this is the ultimate Camaro. You'll enjoy a unique blend of beautiful interior and exterior styling with impressive roadability, ride, and handling, all at a very appealing price. Camaro excitement is a combination of what you can see and a lot of things you wouldn't ordinarily see. You can see new tail lamps, energy-absorbing, soft, resilient rear-end styling, the available rear spoiler, and the totally new grille and Corvette-like energy-absorbing, soft, resilient front end on this Rally Sport. But style is only the beginning of what Camaro is all about. Camaro offers more sportiness this year with an available removable T-top roof. The individual panels lift out easily to let the sun shine in the great convertible tradition. All Camaro models offer interiors to reflect the kind of excitement and luxury you want in a car that matches your personal style. And available equipment that includes power door locks, air conditioning, a tilt steering wheel, genuine GM Delco AM/FM and stereo systems, power windows, and these new color-coordinated cast aluminum wheels in 6 different colors. Camaro, the driver's car. New and redesigned to offer you more driving pleasure than ever before. We would now like to take you on a demonstration drive in a 1978 Chevrolet Camaro.
We don't get the demonstration drive.
Damn, I was really hoping.
Yeah, I was.
Vintage commercials are so good, guys. I cannot get over that.
I was hoping so too, but you know.
They're so good. I could legit chill and watch these vintage car commercials over and over and over. Like, there's plenty of different ones that they did as well. There are multiple commercials for different model years and stuff like that as well. If you guys are interested, by all means, hop on YouTube and seriously just type in even something as simple as like second gen Camaro commercial, and you can go through and you can see all the cool commercials that they did for the different trim packages. And I'll tell you what though, that Rally Sport that was in that specific commercial, the paint scheme and with quote unquote livery that was on that, I absolutely love it. I love the two-tone with the red stripe separating the main body color from both the roof and hood color. So good. Way ahead of its time. That's the type of body color combination that's popular now. Is the black roof, black hood, or carbon fiber look with the two-tone body paint color. That's the look that's popular currently.
Yep.
So, way ahead of its time.
Okay, we're gonna go in here to the third generation, 82 to 92. A little thing here about the third gen. In 87, there was a 20th anniversary commemorative edition, and then in 92, there's a 25th anniversary heritage edition. They were the first Camaros with TBI and a 700R4. That's a 4-speed, but technically a 3-speed with overdrive. And then you had a 5-speed manual. You had the option for 15 or 16-inch wheels. They did go away from the coupe to a hatchback body. And in 87, they did have that third brake light on the rear window. And then later in the years, like 89, they went from it being outside to being inside.
And the third brake light was required by federal safety laws that were changed.
Yep.
So they were able to incorporate it to be compliant with the laws, but they also were able to keep it to where it looked good. It looked like it was natural with the car itself.
Yeah, they did do a good job on doing that third brake light. There are some manufacturers that didn't do so good. I'll be honest on doing that third brake light, but these
Yeah, they
guys
did less than
definitely
good.
pulled it off.
I think so too. I
Both.
personally really like the body style of the third gen a lot.
Mhm.
I think that it for the time it's one of the better styled cars, and that goes for the cars that were in this time frame on the planet at the time. I
Yeah,
really do like the third gen body style quite a bit.
I do as well. And they kept the same body style throughout all of the third gen. The only things that changed were the front bumper and the taillights. Realistically, it's
The
the only thing that changed, and then the rear spoiler
the
and the
hood as
hood,
well, depending on the
the
package that you
package.
selected.
Yep. Both Utah and I, we discussed a little bit earlier that we both have owned third gens.
Mhm.
Utah, yours was a Berlinetta, right? Because it had the
No,
V6.
no, the Berlinetta of the third gen is the model that had the digital interior. The Berlinetta you could have with the 350, the 305, or the 2.8 liter V6. The only one you couldn't get the Berlinetta in was the Iron Duke, which is the
The four
little
cylinder.
tiny baby 4-cylinder. It was like 98 horsepower or something like that. But the Berlinetta was specifically a submodel that they categorized that had a digital dashboard, so digital tach, digital speedometer, and digital oil and water pressure gauges,
Hmm.
or water temp and oil pressure gauges. Um, so that was the what they classified as the Berlinetta trim. And it was cool. The Berlinetta trim was really cool and it was very futuristic. But I heard it was plagued with electrical problems,
Yeah.
just like every other car in the 80s. The one that I had was technically considered a sport coupe model, based off of the front bumper design and the fact that it was the 2.8 liter. Um, Still really cool. It had a little bit less aggressive of a bumper. It didn't have the cool chin spoiler that the Z28 and the other better quote unquote better packages had. um, the IROC Z. That's right. That's right. Yeah. But it was the Sport Coupe.
Okay.
Sweet, sweet Sport Coupe. 2.5 liter Iron Duke, man. Oh man. I'm glad that I didn't get that one. As cool as that motor sounded, it was very gutless.
Yeah.
And it was cute. They put it in because they wanted to be able to offer a eco-friendly version. But mine wasn't nearly as cool as, from what I understand, your third gens were. Um,
They weren't cool.
considerably cooler.
My third gen
They had to
Camaros
have
were
been
not cool.
cooler. No way.
No, one of them was actually technically both were the RS. One had the 2.8 V6 just like yours.
Hmm.
It had different stylings. So it had the 92 Z28 hood on it, and then it had the RS front bumper. So it looked mean and aggressive. It had a Magnaflow exhaust on it, but in the engine wiring, the wiring in the engine bay was a rat's nest. um, and it
That
had
was just a side note to that. Is that was one of the things I think in the 80s that became like a kind of a big deal, was because in the 80s they started adding a lot more complicated electrical components to the vehicles as opposed to the first and second gen Camaros. It was considerably different. There's a lot more electronic components. They were modernizing parts that required a lot more wiring. than the previous generation vehicles.
Mhm.
So I could definitely see that being something that a lot of owners complained about, was the fact that unfortunately trying to do modifications and a lot of alterations required a ton of wiring work and rerouting and things like that to potentially cause quote unquote rat's nest with wiring. So I definitely could see that being a real thing for you to have to deal with.
Yeah. Um, Mine was like that because of a previous person trying to do an engine swap and failing to do so. The other one was an RS. I had the 305, but had tons of fuel issues, and never got it fully running because it was sitting for years. And yeah, and that one had the TBI 305 in it.
Cool looking top end on that motor, with the TBI. Really cool, interesting looking fuel injection setup at the top.
Interesting fact about TBI is that doing fuel injection swaps like Holly EFI on older V8s nowadays is pretty much just a TBI setup, in case you guys didn't know that.
Yeah, it just looks, they're differently styled aesthetically, but it's basically the same concept, same setup. So Chevy's third gen was legitimately a game changer when it came to fuel injection technology for
Mm-hmm.
pretty much the entire automotive industry as a whole.
Yeah.
So big leaps in potential performance options and engine styling.
Yeah, in the third generation, you went through 3 different types of fueling. You had your carburetor for the first couple of years, and then you had TBI, which is a throttle body injection, and then you went to TPI, and starting in '87, which is tune port injection, and that was where actual fuel, and I guess a lot of people nowadays would say where actual fuel injection came into play. Even though TBI was still fuel injection, this one came through fuel rails, as you would see nowadays.
Just to clarify the difference between the two, TBI, that would be Tango Bravo India, TBI, and then TPI Tango Papa India, TPI.
Yeah.
The difference between those two acronyms, I guess it would be considered for the types of injection.
Throttle body injection and tune port.
Yep, and it was the TPI, the indirect injection, which a lot of newer cars now have a direct injection that's based similarly off of that TPI that Chevy invented. But nowadays we are plagued with a lot of carbon buildup in a lot of motors that are direct injected.
Yep.
And the indirect injection, higher, maybe not higher compression, but larger motors didn't have a ton of that issue, just based off of the way that the injection setup worked, the indirect injection. So you could almost say that the old TPI setup was more efficient and didn't require nearly as much internal upkeep as our new direct injection motors.
Yeah.
Yeah, EFB, you're right. Carbon scoring is a real thing for modern engines with direct injection. You're absolutely right. And one bit of a side note with the third gen as well, with their interior packages, they didn't have a ton of different options based off of your packages. A lot of the earlier generation, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, all had very similar interiors, similar seats, similar options. Your shifter and everything depended on whether you had an automatic transmission or manual. But the steering wheel was really cool. Had like this really cool rectangle in the center, and it was kind of a concave steering wheel. But after I think it was 87 to 92 or 88 to 92, had kind of a more modern steering wheel because they had to put a airbag in the steering wheel, so it had a bit more of a modern looking, big, kind of chunky boy looking steering wheel. If you look it up, if you Google it, you can see the difference between the two interiors. Mine was an 86, so it didn't have the steering wheel mounted airbag in it, so I had the really cool concave, flat surface, more sportier, in my opinion, a sportier looking steering wheel. It was really cool. But the interiors for the time were really nice. The gauges were all really nice. A lot of people would swap out for the Z28 and the IROC gauges, so it was super easy to do. And they would get rid of my Camaro in particular had a Flowmaster exhaust from the cat's back, and had 3-to-1 headers on both sides, so it was incredibly loud. And a lot of people they made the mistake of thinking it was the 305 V8. I did get lucky, and I did have the 135 horsepower 2.8 liter. So I did get lucky on that, but it's even still, it wasn't a mover. It was a looker, not a mover, and it sounded really nice. Sounded great with the exhaust setup that was on it, but it didn't giddy up per se. With your Camaros that you had, rest in peace to the one that never got running, but the one you had beforehand, did you have headers or what specific, like what kind of exhaust did you have on that?
Yeah, so the one with the 2.8 just had MagnaFlow catback on it.
Gotcha.
And I don't remember what series MagnaFlow it was, but it did sound similar to what a 305 would sound like stock. But it was pretty decent. It sounded good, like you said.
OEM,
Go ahead.
OEM manifolds on it?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's just a catback exhaust. And fun little fact, you brought up the swapping of the gauges. The reason why most people did that is because, one, the looks were a little bit different, and then two, it had a higher speedometer and tachometer than the others.
Absolutely. It was a very fun generation, and a evolving generation for Camaros and Chevy in particular, because after they did their 20th edition, 20th anniversary, the commemorative, they basically had to rechange quite a bit of how they were doing business in the industry, because safety and emissions were changing. So they had to start adding airbags to the vehicles. They had to rework the front and rear ends of the cars for crash test ratings.
Yep.
So the bodies and the bumpers look the same, but if you were to take an early third gen and a late model third gen and take the front bumpers apart and look at the way the frames are structured, they're subtly different from one another.
Yeah.
And that's just solely based off of the crash test ratings and the safety that they had to follow for the United States. So when they did the 1992, which Big Rips in chat was the last year of the third gen, they offered the 25th anniversary heritage package, which was super dope looking. They had a cool stripe package. They offered a separate spoiler plaque for it that looked really cool, and it was, very showpiecey, and it was the end of an era, unfortunately, because the Camaro eventually got to the point where the sales were still semi-okay, but times were a-changin', ladies and gents. And unfortunately, the muscle car era was starting to fade away, and people wanted things that were family-oriented, better on gasoline, quieter.
Yep.
Which, who knows why you would want something like that. Much respect to you if you want it or you need it, but big rips for 1992.
Yeah.
The end of an era. But I do believe that Nordic has found some more beautiful goodies for us, and I love indulging in these. He's got ourselves an IROC Z commercial and some IROC information that we're going to watch here. And I always look forward to these because Nordic, the beautiful
Camaro,
mind
IROC.
has, is so good at finding these retro commercials, and I love that. I love that this is a thing for the podcast for you guys to enjoy, because it's something that I think gives you a little bit of insight into how the times were then.
Yep.
It gives you a look into a time capsule. I think it's a good opportunity for everybody to get a grasp on it. So I do see that Nordic's ready to rock and roll. I'm ready to rock and roll. And I think you guys will have fun with this commercial. I remember this one pretty well because I used to do a ton of research when I had my 2.8 because I wanted it to be the cool Camaro, and I was looking into engine swaps. So I literally watched everything on the internet that had to do with the third gen. So you guys will have fun with this.
Oh, yeah. Let's get it.
Camaro IROC Z.
Looking so hot, so good. So much fun under the hood. I rock and roll. Tough on the street, so mean. Camaro's my thunder. Drive this machine. I rock and roll, yeah. Drive to taste Chevy. Live with taste Chevy.
So cheesy, but so good.
Yeah. They were cheesy, but they were really good. Really good at what they did for the commercials in the era.
Time period appropriate, 100%. I agree. It was so good, man. I loved the IROC Z commercials. I also forgot that the IROC Z had a totally separate steering wheel than some of the other trim levels. They had a similar looking concave steering wheel, but instead of the rectangle that used to be in the center, it was a circle. I totally spaced that.
Yeah.
That just goes to show you how few IROC Z third gen Camaros that I've actually seen IRL.
The reason of that being is because the IROC is the International Race of Champions. They were in talks, well, you're going to see it in this video, but they were in talks with Chevy on what car to go with, and they did a specific package which they released to the public, which is the IROC Z28. So you had their quote-unquote racing steering wheel, the suspension, and some other goodies that the Z28 didn't have, or the other ones didn't have, the other trim levels. So when we're watching this video, you're going to kind of see and hear what we're talking about here.
So cool, guys. I'm ready for it.
Okay, let's get it.
Everyone has heard of Chevrolet's IROC Camaro. And if you follow racing, you know that IROC stands for International Race of Champions, a series that features Camaro-bodied cars. Chevrolet updated the stock IROC for this year, so we thought we'd take a quick look at one. We also figured it'd be fun to see how it stacks up against the race car that inspires its name. Here they are, Chevrolet Stock IROC Z, an International Race of Champions IROC race car, ready for a showdown at Pocono International Raceway. But first, a little background is in order. Here's Jay Signori, president of the International Race of Champions.
IROC started in 1974, basically with a Porsche program, which didn't go over very well with the drivers and, of course, the United States sponsors. So we came up with the idea to go talk to Chevrolet.
The current Chevrolet-based IROC race car is very much like a Winston Cup stock car. It has a sturdy tube frame rather than a production unibody.
The roof skin, the front windshield, the rear bumper skin, and the door skins are actually Chevrolet pieces.
But there's much more to the IROC-Chevrolet relationship than just parts.
We've had a tremendous amount of help through the years from Chevrolet in technical input. I guess our latest input, I would say, would be coming from the wind tunnel data that we received.
And Chevrolet gets a thing or two out of the bargain. John Heinrichs, engineering manager for the Camaro and the Corvette, explains.
We've gotten an awful lot of image building on the Chevrolet products because of the amount of television coverage that we get from the series. So we feel like our involvement has been very beneficial to us.
For our face-off, we selected a freshly prepared veteran of the 88 IROC race series and an 89 IROC Z 5-liter 5-speed. This production IROC has a new low-restriction exhaust system that helps boost power to 230 horses. The race car doesn't have much of an exhaust system at all, and it sounds great. Inside, the race car is all business. And ladies, heels and dresses are a fashion mistake for getting in and out. But anything goes in the cushy, cloth-covered stock interior. Straight-line acceleration was our biggest surprise. Even though the Chevrolet-based IROC race engine makes 470 horsepower and the production car about half as much, the production IROC beat the race car away from the starting line. But that lead didn't last. 0 to 60 took 4.5 seconds for the race car and 5.9 for the production car. Quarter-mile time, 12.1 compared to 13.9 for the stock IROC. And top speed for the race car is 185 or more, about 140 for the production version. On the handling course, lack of familiarity kept us from really pushing the race car, but we learned enough to know we wouldn't want to drive this IROC in traffic. The steering is heavy, the engine hammers endlessly at your ears, and the brakes don't work until you get them good and hot. But the racing IROC gave us the best kick in the pants we've had in a long time. The stock IROC is not near as exciting, but strangely enough, the race car made us appreciate the street car more. Sure, the IROC Z runs in the race car's mirror, but that's not a bad place for any car to be. And what's more, the IROC Z will take you to the grocery store when it's finished at the racetrack. Who could ask for more?
I believe that was the end of the video.
That was. That was actually a lot of fun to watch too, because that was very educational for me as well. I actually learned a couple of new things that I didn't know.
Oh, what'd you learn?
In that, so I had no idea that IROC started that long ago. I had no idea that it had started out as a Porsche racing series. I did not know that. So I also didn't know that the similarities between the race car that they used in IROC and also the IROC Z that they made for Chevy, production-wise, was so close in performance-wise to the race car.
Yeah.
Like maybe not numbers-wise, but chassis, suspension, engine design, things like that. I didn't realize that it was so closely designed to the way that the race car was spec'd out. So I'm super impressed. I didn't know about that.
Some things.
See, guys, we're learning, we're teaching, we're growing together, and that's the beautiful part about this podcast that Nordic is the daddy of. It's educational, it's fun, and even the presenters are learning stuff. So
It's
I
true.
couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier to have watched that just now. I guess I didn't watch everything about third gen on the internet. I stand 100,000% corrected.
Yeah,
done,
that was
Nordic.
one new thing for me as well, was the IROC Porsche program. I did not know about that until I found that video and watched it.
Yeah, I had no idea that it started in 1974.
Yeah. I don't think many people do, unless you were around in that time.
Yeah, unless you were really into it or you're really into the history on that. I couldn't imagine having that level of knowledge on it. But guess what? Now we do, and everybody that's listening right now can carry that. And the next time somebody asks you, or the topic of IROC or IROC Z and the history of, you can definitely tell them. Some people will try to deny and call BS that it was a Porsche racing situation to start off with, and you can tell them to, educate yourself and scream it like that as loud as you can.
Yeah, scream that as loud as possible.
And then make sure to request Fs at all times.
At all point in all times.
It's cool. Really cool.
So that wraps up the third gen for us. We move into the fourth gen, which started in '93, went all the way to 2002, where it ultimately ended.
Had a good run, a real good run. One thing that you'll notice right off the bat is a drastic redesign.
Yep.
Drastic redesign. There's some elements that are the same, similar, but just totally different. It's not bad looking, in my opinion, either. For the 19 through 02, or the 93 through 02, they are not bad looking. If we're being if we're being honest with ourselves, not the best looking model of the Camaro, but not bad looking either. So I think Nordic has experience with these cars, a little bit more than what I do on these. I've seen a lot of them, and I've had a couple of experiences with them. I've raced a lot of these, not in the car, but racing against them with other cars. And they range from pretty mild to pretty wild.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah, I've had experiences with both different body styles of the fourth gen, the earlier and the later. A lot of GM enthusiasts love the 350s these came with, both the LT1 and the LS1. Of course, if you know anything about modern small block swaps, you'll know the LS1 is huge in being one that's swapped. The LT1 is one that a lot of, I guess you could say, purists like to try to, they swear by it, and they will swap that into third gens, keep them in their fourth gens, and they'll say it'll beat anything out there, even the LS1s. You went through some different cosmetic changes in the two different body styles. Of course, you had them in your automatic and your manual. You went through the 700R4 to the 4L60E transmission for the automatics, and then you had a 5-speed, and then also the T56 6-speed manual that you found in the SS and the Z28s.
Good solid transmission.
Yeah, definitely.
One that's still pretty widely used today in sporting.
Yeah, a lot of people still use it. It's very common to find in pro touring builds. Some drag racers will use the T56, and a lot of people who swap LS1s will swap a T56 with it.
They'll made it to it specifically for two main reasons: reliability of the transmission itself, and the accessibility of gearing ratios that can be swapped into the T56.
Yep.
A lot of different options.
Engine-wise, we didn't have a whole lot of different options. In the 4th gen, we had the infamous 3.8 V6, and then and don't quote me on this, but I don't believe they came out with the 5-liter V8 for the 4th gens. I couldn't find anything on them. But we had the 5.7, both the LT1 and the LS1. We had our base model, the RS, the SS, and the Z28.
And you are right about that, Nordic. They didn't offer the 5-liter, the technical 305.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't offer that for the 4th gen in any of the models. However, they did in the early 4th gens. They offered a 3.4 liter V6.
Yeah.
That was a little bit underpowered until after 95. That was when they moved over to the 3.8 liter that was used in a lot of Buicks, Pontiacs, and GM vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Both longitudinal. Am I saying that right? Longitudinal.
Yep.
As well as it was used for front-wheel drive vehicles from GM, and they also ran it for rear-wheel drive vehicles as well, such as this Camaro in particular. Which, if I'm being honest, 3.8 V6 that was used, the 200 horsepower, it was pretty solid. It was actually a decent, both performing and sounding V6.
Yeah.
It was probably one of their better ones. Buick actually offered it as a Buick and Pontiac, I think, both had a supercharged version.
Chevy did in the Monte Carlo.
That's right. You're absolutely right. They offered the supercharged in the Monte Carlo as well. Yeah, you're right about that.
Everyone who had it had a supercharged version in the package.
It was nothing to snort at, man. It was a twin screw Eaton M62 supercharger.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
It was pretty cool. It was cool looking. It wasn't the craziest performance-wise, but it would definitely catch you off guard if you were slipping and you pulled up to one of these at a red light just expecting to dust it because it didn't have SS or Z28 badges on it. You'd get caught slipping.
You would, and I'm actually kind of surprised that Chevy decided not to throw that supercharger onto the 3.8 in the Camaro as like some sort of package option.
Yeah, it was a popular swap that people did outside of the fact because, like Nordic said, they didn't offer it for the Camaro, but they did offer it for certain Pontiac applications. They offered it for certain GM applications, and along with that included both Pontiac and Buick, but not for the Camaro for some reason. But it was a very popular swap because it was easy to do. You could go find a wrecked supercharged 2.8 out of like a Bonneville or one of the Pontiac models.
Grand Prix.
Basically swap it. Yeah, Grand Prix GPX?
Yep.
GXP? Yeah, GXP, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was an easy swap, and the power difference that it would make was pretty wild. So you'd pull up to a Camaro that you could clearly tell had the V6 exhaust, no SS badges, no Z28 badges, and if you were not ready, they'd take your doors with you with that Eaton M62 that they had on it. So
yep.
It was kind of a cool aftermarket personalization thing that the people that had the V6 model would do. But aside from that, the LT1 and the LS1 options that were offered were pretty solid engines for the time. 315 for the 5.7 LT1, 320, 325-ish for the 5.7 LS1. So they had some giddy up. They weren't super heavy cars either, but they also weren't super light either
No.
because safety and standards that the manufacturers had to keep up with. But it was a cool option for a car that a lot of people had very mixed feelings about for the fourth gen body styling, both versions of it.
A lot of people would say it looks like a catfish. A lot of people say the Fortune looks like a catfish, and that's where they got their motivation, I guess you could say, for the looks. But then other people say it looks like a shark because of the back. But yeah, the one thing for me that I don't like about the LT1s was OptiSpark, or OptiSpark, however you want to say it, was prone to failure. It failed so much, and still to this day, people who have the LT1 are dealing with it still. The only way of getting around that is to convert it to something else or engine swap.
Yep, and the good thing about it is there are plenty of aftermarket options that you can replace the OptiSpark with.
Plethora.
For the LT1, so there is a lot of different options that were created pretty soon after they realized that Opti was causing a lot of problems. A lot of the big performance companies jumped on it and created much better ignition systems that would help alleviate the issue, and the LT1 is still a viable option that's used today.
Yep. And guys, I'm going to apologize. I didn't grab commercials for the 4th gen. Apparently it slipped my mind to grab some commercials and videos for the 4th gen.
I actually have one.
Oh, Utah has one.
Yeah, I was semi-prepared for this. Let me find where it go. Give me just un momento, por favor.
Yep.
Oh yeah, this one's a good one. You guys are gonna like this one. Let me send this over real quick to Nordic, guys. Bear with me for just one more moment.
Sick.
Perfecto. This one's a good one. These are all pre-watched because I have a commercial addiction. So we're gonna watch this one. It's pretty cool. It goes over a couple of different things with the earlier model, 4th gen. There wasn't a lot of changes that took place aside from the styling changes. There were a few things that they did differently that we'll kind of go over after the commercial. But I think you guys will like this one. It's kind of cool.
Get the car and get away. Get the keys and drive all day. Let's take a ride to anywhere and take our time getting there. Get in the car and get out and go. Get in the car and go. Get in the car and go. Get in the car and go.
Oh my gosh. What
Crazy
a treat
retro.
that was. Holy cow.
So the few little things that they touched on in that commercial were they were trying to show off like trim package, and they tried to show off the wheels that were offered for the the higher trim levels, which I think were a little bit underwhelming. But it was kind of an eye opener because they took a direct shot at Ford, like
Yeah, straight up.
legitimately just shooting in Ford's direction without showing mercy, having the Fox body broken down on the side of the road, and they kind of kept with the whole Knight Rider scenario where the car autonomously pulls up and opens the door and puts the seatbelt on for you and takes off. And
if only it really did that.
Oh man, now you got to buy a Tesla if you want that to happen.
No thanks.
Which is actually a company that we'll cover in a later episode as well.
Yep.
For you guys, we'll cover the Tesla. Yeah, EFB, it's one of those situations where this car got a lot of mixed feelings. I will for sure say in that specific commercial, it is not the best Camaro ever.
No, it isn't.
It's cool, and for the time period, definitely was a competitor still on the streets. But it most definitely is not the best Camaro ever, in my opinion. So they had a lot of cheesy adverts. There were a few other ones that are kind of shorter, really quick commercials that kind of just went over, the new Chevy Camaro with anti-lock brakes and strange-looking wheels. Find one at a dealership near you. And then I do believe there was one that was for the facelift. But unfortunately, I couldn't find a decent enough copy of the commercial for the facelift version to waste your guys' time on. They did change it. It did look different. I can probably at least find a picture of it that I can show you guys for the facelift. Bear with me here. Where did that one go? I did find one, and it was super cheesy. I didn't watch it, though. That's my fault. That's completely my fault. But they did do a facelift on it, and it did look a little bit better than the original.
Yeah, it did look a lot better.
But they basically kept the performance the same, option-wise.
Yep.
For the car, they offered a couple of different options. It was the first all-aluminum engine that was offered in a Camaro since 1969. Everything else was cast. Up until then, they offered the SS version, had better flowing exhaust, it had a different intake system, 305 horsepower, bigger wheels and tires, slightly different suspension that they offered from the first, the dual rectangle headlight design.
Mm-hmm.
And then they offered the 35th anniversary edition in 2002 for obviously just the 35th anniversary. But the sad thing was there wasn't a lot of anything that was special. It just legitimately was a badged C28.
Yep.
For the 35th anniversary. And unfortunately, that was the last Camaro as they ceased production of the F-body because people weren't buying it, unfortunately. They were
sales plummeted.
yeah, they were seeing sports coupes were just not what people were desiring at the time. Which, are you people crazy? Are you insane? Are you out of your mind? Like, so it stopped. They stopped F-body production completely, and they offered the Bravo 4 Charlie special, which was a service package for police agencies.
Yep.
But other than that, that was really it. So 2002, literally F's in chat for the F body, because that was it. And a lot of people thought that that was it completely for the Camaro as a whole, because we didn't even get the thought of another one until 2010.
Well, technically, I think it was 2006 or 2008 when they brought the concept out.
Yeah, but just like with every other car company in the early to mid 2000s, everybody had some sort of extravagant concept car that the manufacturers were. I mean, Bentley had tons of concepts, Chrysler had a bunch of concepts, Ford had their share of concepts, and then Chevy had the Camaro concept that I do believe was Chrysler and GM both put their concept cars into Midnight Club Dub Edition.
They did, yeah.
As available drivable vehicles, but they didn't pull the trigger on it, and tell the actual public that it was a for sure thing until I think it was early to mid 2009 when they were like, yeah, we're finally gonna bring this concept into production.
Yep. And
So it was like
when it came out.
2006 and 2007 was when they offered the ideas for the concept, and they had a drivable model that they were kind of showing off, and I do believe it was on Top Gear as well. I think they allowed the boys at Top Gear to do a review on it, as well as Chrysler did it with the Challenger. But they finally pulled the trigger on it in 2009, and sure enough, they came out with the 5th gen. Totally redesigned. 100% redesigned. Chassis, body, and motor-wise, completely redesigned. I think I've seen quite a few of these. I've been in a few of them as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that Nordic has quite a bit of intelligence on these ones as well. Being a big Camaro fan at the time, when they announced it, he did his homework and research on it too, just because of the fact that he's a bow tie till he die. You have to know your homework, and I do remember pretty solidly being schooled about these newer generation Camaros by Nordic himself. So I think Nordic's intelligence level on these makes mine look like ant. Very small ant. They had a pretty solid platform to build off of, because Chevy has access to tons of different platforms and chassis at the time that they could use, and this one was based off of similarities to the F bodies chassis, but they did do quite a few different improvements on the platform itself by widening the stance on it. They did strengthening in certain points. Brand new suspension setup, completely different than what they've done on any of the previous Camaros, and they didn't do bad on the body styling. I think that they did a good job in bringing something modern retro, which is the big thing now, and I think they did a pretty solid job with the 5th gen.
Yeah, you can see with their modern retro design. I'm going to try to point out here on my screen. The front bumper, you can see that grille was very reminiscent of the 69. Right here you have these little gills and the rear quarter panels that the 69 had. The interior they try to keep it like the 69, where you had your main like important gauges, I guess you could say, for your road driving right there, in front of you, and then in the center console you had like your oil pressure, voltage and whatnot in front of the shifter, right there in the center console, just like the 69 had. You had a couple different engines that you could get throughout the 5th gen. You had your V6, which was a 3.6. You had your 6.2 liter V8, which is an LS motor. You have your 7 liter V8 that you'd find only in the Z28. And then your supercharged 6.2 liter that you found in the ZL1. There's a couple different packages you could find. The base model slash LT, almost the same thing. You had your RS, the SS, the Z28, the ZL1, and the Copo. And just like with 69, you could get like an RS SS or a 2SS or a 2RS or a 1LT or a 2LT. You could get those different packages for the 5th gen. I wouldn't say that my knowledge is super extensive of 5th gens, but I've done a little bit of homework as I was looking into buying one not too long ago. My favorite 5th gen, you guys should know it by now, is going to be the Z28. My absolutely favorite newer Camaro is that one. Even compared to like the new ZL1s and whatnot, I would take that 2015 Z28 over any of them.
It was so good. So we'll put it this way, guys. That 2015 Z28 that they designed was different as a whole compared to the rest of the 5th gen Camaros that they offered.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so different, in fact, that people were so skeptical of the resurgence of modern American muscle cars, and the global stage was set, and there was a lot of trash talking because it's notorious that American muscle cars can only do straight lines.
Yeah.
This 2015 Z28, in fact, was one of the faster cars on the world famous Nürburgring. It laid down a time that was so close to Nissan's R35 Skyline that Nissan sweat it so much that they had to go back in and restructure the R35 and make it lighter and do changes to the suspension and do changes to the drivetrain because they didn't want to be that close to what was considered an American muscle car on the world stage. And guess what? Even after all the tweaks and changes that Nissan made, they stayed right next to them on that time frame. And that made the world realize, hey boys, GG's out there on the old Nürburgring. We're in the market to win it. So Chevy came out swinging, and they gave a lot of manufacturers big old shiners, big black eyes with that Z28.
Oh yeah.
And it is still, to this day, it's still on the Nürburgring time list. You can still look it up, and you can see all of the high performance supercars and exotic cars that are all around it in the time frames. Some much slower and some slightly faster. but to have a Z28 that high on the list is probably one of Chevy's performance-wise most impressive feats, in my opinion. So Nürburgring is a very challenging circuit, and it laid down the ground rules for cars moving forward in America as far as production and performance goes.
Mm-hmm. It's very true. The Z28 laid down a really, really good time. They took a whole stance with it where, a lot of these cars were being built to be fast and they were great straight line. But their whole purpose of the Z28 was to bring back that reminiscent of the IROC Z28 and the Z28 from the second gen, where it was good at handling, like they called it in the second gen, a road hugger. So their main purpose for it, track racing.
So to be blindingly specific, their official Nürburgring lap time was 7 minutes 37 seconds. So 7:37:47. That was
fast.
4 whole seconds faster than their ZL1 and faster than the hot lap times for the 911 Carrera S and the LP640 Lamborghini Murcielago.
Yeah.
So take that into consideration when you're thinking of an American car manufacturer, American muscle car, in quotations, beating the 911 Carrera S and the LP640 Lamborghini Murcielago. That's a big deal, and that shook people.
It
had
did.
a lot of car manufacturers shook. They couldn't handle that. I would highly recommend going on YouTube, and you can watch the entire lap time from inside the car.
Yeah, I debated on putting that in here, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to.
Yeah, I recommend you guys go watch it and enjoy it. Have some fun. It's kind of a follow-up to the podcast. It is a good watch. The driver of the car is not only super ballsy, because it's Nürburgring's a notoriously dangerous circuit, but it's a hell of a watch. It's actually one of my favorite things to do on YouTube is watch the different vehicles in-car lap times that they do for hot laps. So Nordic and I, back on our gaming tip, we are notorious for doing the Nordschleife leg of the Nürburgring and setting hot lap times for all sorts of different cars. And that's one of our very favorite things to do when gaming is hot lap the Nordschleife leg of the Nürburgring.
Yep.
I think at this point it's so burned into our brains that I'm willing to bet if we did go there IRL, it'd still be very, very challenging, but I at least we would know the layout of the track.
Yeah, I'm sure we could.
Having to do it hundreds of times. Trying to dial in and tune cars specifically for it on Forza.
Yep.
So one of Chevy's biggest staples right there. 7 minutes 37 seconds.
On the good old Nürburgring. I would say it's probably one of their greatest accomplishments is setting that time in the Camaro on the Nürburgring.
I think so too. I would agree with that.
We do have some commercials here, and then we have a Motor Week segment on the Z28. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the Z28 commercial here. I don't know if any of you guys out there watching have looked up what the Z28 looks like by now, but in case you haven't, you're about to see what it looks like right here.
Facelift.
And there you have what the Z28 looked like. Really looks amazing. Might I dare say almost perfection of
it's their best looking Camaro that they've done, including, in my opinion, the 6th gen.
Yeah, I would say between 5th and 6th gen, that one is the best looking.
Hands down.
Hey, Vaughn's here. What's up, Vaughn? You're in time for
Vaughn the
commercials.
Vaughn the Don, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, so
here's a really weird commercial from GM for the SS Camaro. It's almost reminiscent of how they did old school commercials because it's so cheesy and dorky. But I'm going to throw this on for you guys. I hope you enjoy it.
Dude, check this out. I got a great idea for the Camaro commercial. We start in that desert, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, what car is that? And then it's like, bam!
Whoa!
Super fast.
And mirrors, a whole bunch of mirrors.
I guess. But maybe it's a woman that's driving.
Hot.
Totally hot. She's blonde.
Redhead.
Or a redhead. You know, we should be in the city.
Driving fast.
Screeching through the streets.
Dodging hay bales.
No, she's in a city. I don't know why you'd have hay. But what about a chase?
Ooh, yeah, with bad guys. And a helicopter.
Right, yeah, all that stuff. It's right behind her. They're catching up. This is where the energy is, man.
Yeah, and they chase her onto a roof and she flies off.
Dude, she just flies off a building?
Picture it.
Yeah, I'm picturing disaster. Like, we need an ending.
I got it. Car lands, she drives up, she's a teacher.
Teacher?
Hi, guys.
Hey, hi, Miss Evelyn. I did not see that coming.
And then
the announcer says,
the 426 horsepower Camaro.
And then we're done.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, if Utah and I did a commercial together, that's probably exactly what it would sound like.
That's the exact brainstorming session that would happen. Only we'd be, yeah, it was pretty much it. That would definitely have been it. For sure.
Oh,
There'd probably be a lot of nonsense that would happen in the meantime as well. We'd probably have a few more nonsensical things that would happen, like horses attacking the car or something like that. Oh, rockauto.com, baby. All the parts your car will ever need. Not sponsored, by the way.
Rock Auto, if you hear this, hit your boys up.
Holla at your boys.
But this is the Motor Week segment on the Z28. It is 6 minutes long, so just sit back and relax, guys. And
grab yourself a peanut butter sandwich, refresh whatever drink it is that you're working on, and kick back and relax. Take a load off.
Just have fun watching this one here. Let me make sure that it stays in 1080p for y'all to
Week is made
watch it
possible
good.
by Rock Auto, Tire Rack, and Die Hard.
Over the last 50 years, the GM, Ford, and Chrysler muscle car awards have had their ebbs and flows. But with the Challenger's rebirth for 2008, the Camaro for 2010, and an all-new Mustang dawning, the battle is at a fever pitch. All parties are lobbing ever more potent missiles across the border with increasing regularity. And one of the latest, the Chevrolet Camaro Z28, has GM shooting for the stars. When the original Z28 performance package became available for the 1967 Chevrolet Camaro, few people had interest in turning their Camaros into track-ready pieces, unless they had SCCA racing on their agenda. Thus, those originals are extremely rare and desirable. Well, times have changed, but no less desirable will be this all-new 2015 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. In similar fashion, most of today's buyers will probably not have racing or even track time in mind, but people are much savvier today about what it means to own the most track-capable Camaro ever. We could fill our test with all of the updates that it has received, but bottom line, if it'll help it get around the track faster, it's been addressed. Still, here's a partial rundown. Total revamping of suspension, carbon ceramic brakes from Brembo added, aero elements optimized, and additional downforce obtained. And along with those additions, some civilized interior features have been eliminated to shave weight. The back seat is lighter by 9 pounds with the removal of the pass-through and using different seat foam. Sound deadening has been removed throughout the car, as has the carpeting in the trunk, where the tire inflator kit has also been eliminated and a smaller battery installed. Getting rid of air conditioning and all but one radio speaker completes the interior's diet. In addition, there are no HID headlights or fog lights, and the back glass is thinner. Still, even with those extreme measures, the Z28 is only 55 pounds lighter than an SS1LE, but it's 300 pounds less than the big boy Camaro ZL1. Need more? How about 305 series rubber? Oh, that's up front as well as in back on 19-inch wheels, making for a contact patch about as big as you can get on the street. Pumping the power is GM's naturally aspirated 7-liter LS7 V8 with 505 horsepower and 481 pound-feet of torque, and you have no problems hearing it outside and inside. The LS7 sends that power through a Tremec TR6060 6-speed manual and spent gases through an active 2-mode exhaust with high-flow converter. With all of that in mind, we put in some hot lap research time at Gingerman Raceway in western Michigan to qualify the results, which are grip, grip, and more grip. In corners, both tight and sweeping, it was easy to find the car's limits, feeling very much race car-like. But even though you can clearly sense them, it can also be easy to go past them. The chassis, however, is almost telepathic on when those transitions will take place. So things are easy to control and the damping seems spot on. On the hardware side, there's a Torsen limited slip differential and dynamic suspension spool valve dampers, along with stiffer springs and bushings. As for the software, GM's Performance Traction Management delegates power delivery and electronic assistance. With 5 levels to choose from, much like many companies, there are more levels of management than most people need. When working the trans both into corners and down the straight, the shifter feels beefy and gears are easily selected at speed. Not much to say about the brakes other than that they are simply phenomenal. Believe us when we say that if you've ever thought of turning your Camaro into a track car, there's no way you could do it this well or this cheaply by yourself. Now, if you're thinking of buying the Z28 just to look cooler and improve your poser quotient, you'll probably be disappointed, as additions, though many, are pretty subtle. While it's not new, the front fascia is altered thanks to the blocked-off openings, hollowed-out bow tie, and front splitter. There are understated aero treatments down the sides and around wheel openings, and finally a wicker bill added to the rear spoiler. Pricing is nice and simple. $75,000, take it or leave it, though there is one option package available that adds the air conditioning back in as well as 5 more speakers for the radio. Shaving weight and increasing performance is always a good play for the track, so it's a no-brainer that the 2015 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 is a serious contender. It not only does the fabled Z28 name justice, but it's a much better car than the big boy ZL1. Much like the friendlier Mustang Boss 302 is more appealing to us than the Shelby GT500. When it comes to Camaros, there's none better than a Z28.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Z28. 1 year
Pinnacle.
and 1 year only.
Pinnacle of the 5th gen. But I will say one thing. The Z28 that they did, although it was only for 1 year, did set the bar for the for the leading years after, as far as performance for the 5th gen goes, and it also led directly into how the performance is looked at for the 6th gen.
Yeah,
It set the bar, and it set the bar very high.
it did, and it made it to where they almost had to match the same kind of track performance in the 6th gen with the Z28. While it's not quite there with the Z28, it's close. And
Yeah,
for what it
they
is
did
now,
a good
they
job.
Yeah.
They did a good job at kind of keeping the ball rolling in the direction that they needed to as far as performance expectations go.
And to kind of bring in packages and engines, I almost said engines for the 6th gen, we bring back a 4-liter, 4-cylinder, sorry. It's a turbocharged Eco 4-cylinder, kind of like what the Iron Duke was, but the Iron Duke wasn't supercharged. I mean, turbocharged. Man, I am brain farting like crazy. We have the 3.6 V6. We have the 6.2 V8, of course, and then the supercharged 6.2 and the Z01. And just like before, we had the base or the LT, the LS, the SS, and the Z01. And of course, with these packages, you can get the 2LT, 1LS, 2LS, 2SS, all the different sub packages. I personally haven't been in a 6th gen Camaro. I've seen plenty of them. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. I have been in one. It was in Hawaii. It was a convertible, and it was the V6. They are pretty nice.
Still has plenty of chutzpah.
Yeah, for being a
340 horsepower.
Yeah, for being a V6, it was plenty of power to get you around a small island. I haven't driven one in a big city. I haven't. The only thing I've done it is the freeway or the highway going around the island in Hawaii. That's it. Have you had any experiences with the 6th gen?
I actually test drove a 6th gen when I was car shopping. Ended up getting a Dodge Charger instead, but the one that I drove was their base model 3.6 V6. It wasn't a convertible. It was just a normal hardtop 3.6 liter V6 base model. Interior was cool. Windshields are a bit small for my taste. Nothing out of the ordinary when it comes to like higher low visibility. I think for me it was more of how the light is reflected off of the windshield, just based off of the angle of it. It was cool. Like they're chutzpah little peppy V6s, man. 340 horsepower is nothing to snort at. Pretty comfortable interiors. I mean, it's got all the amenities you could ask for. The base model has actually got some goodies in it. You still get like your satellite radio. You still get heated seats, heated side view mirrors. Body styling is not too awfully different. It looks a little bit plain compared to the more desirable or higher end packages. But they are pretty cool. I did take it for a test drive and parked it and opted for the 6.4 liter Camaro or just 6.4 liter Charger. Just solely based on, well, not solely based on because it was a 6.4 liter.
Because it was Mopar.
But it was cool. They were really nice. They're very quality oriented. The dashboards were very Gauges were very nice. Dashboards are solid. The interior didn't feel cheap. It actually looks like they put some time and effort into designing the interior. So that was actually a plus. And it gives all of the amenities that you could possibly want. The other thing about the 6th generation Camaro is the very first year it was available, and actually won Motor Trend's Car of the Year. And for a lot of manufacturers, that is a big deal.
Yep.
Because Motor Trend is one of those names like Car and Driver that is a media outlet specifically for the automotive industry that does carry quite a bit of merit. And so
Yes.
first year of the 6th gen, they won Car of the Year right out the gate.
Which is something like Utah saying is everybody wants to get that.
Manufacturers fight for it every year. Every year they fight for it.
There's really not a whole lot to go over with the 6th gen. It's the generation we're in currently. You see them all over the place along with 5th gens. But I did find a very interesting commercial from Australia for it. And in Australia, it's not the Chevy Camaro, it's the HSV Camaro. It's
Holden.
Yep, Holden. A very interesting commercial that I found there. But we got 3 commercials to go through here for the 6th gen. I'm gonna go ahead and load up this Holden one here for you guys.
Let's rock it out, lads and lasses.
Super corny commercial.
If anybody ever put Nordic and I in charge of putting together an opera, that's what it would be.
Yep, a couple V8s and there we go.
A lot of noise.
a lot of noise.
But we'd offer popcorn and drinks.
Oh yeah.
And blackjack.
This commercial is for the 2016 SS Camaro, supposedly based in Dubai. Who knows if it really is, but it's almost 2 minutes long. Let's dive right into this one.
Dem Brembos do.
Yeah, them Brembos really helped it out there.
It's so dramatic.
We've got one last commercial here, and it's the 2018 Z01 with the 1LE track package. This is straight from Chevrolet. I'm gonna go ahead and play this for you guys here.
Chevrolet.
Chevrolet. And there you have it.
Very nice. I like you. I do want to add in one really quick footnote.
What's up?
For all of my homies out there, all the pop culture lovers, all my geeks, all my nerds, both the 5th and 6th gen Camaros were featured in multiple Transformers movies as your sweet bouncing baby boy Bumblebee.
Yep.
So that was also another big milestone for Chevrolet as well, was they did take precedence as one of the main feature cars in multiple big Hollywood productions. So big shout out to all my Transformers fans out there. Regardless of what you say, Michael Bay did a great job. You can't change my mind. No debate. It's not up for debate. F's in chat. As a little footnote, aside from numerous awards that were won, so on and so forth. And while we're on the performance kick as well, one other side footnote regarding Chevrolet's racing pedigree. The 2017 ZL1 Camaro did set a top speed production record of 205 and a Nordschleife lap time of 7 minutes 16 seconds on the book. So it wasn't a full Nürburgring lap. It was just a Nordschleife leg, but it was 7 minutes 16 seconds, 0.4. So pretty damn fast. And it's one of the first cars in the world that has a 10-speed automatic transmission that allows for an insane amount of both power and torque production and delivery at a huge rev range, like insane amount of adaptability for the vehicle. So no wonder it put down a sub 720 record on the Nordschleife.
I just want to say before we finish this out with this last slide and this quote here, my two must-have Camaros before I die are the 69 Camaro, whether it's a Yenko or not. I would absolutely love it if it was a genuine Yenko, but at this point, I'm realizing how unlikely it will be to get a Yenko. So
Chase your dreams, homie. I believe in you.
Yeah, well, one day. Let's hope. And then the other one is going to be the 2015 Z28. Those are my two must-have Camaros before I die.
Good choices. Very good choices.
Thank
if
you.
I were to choose two Camaros, I'll just kind of follow a similar template of what Nordic is doing. I would very much like to have a third gen Camaro with a modern swap in it. God willing, either they're 6.2 naturally aspirated, or with any luck, they're 6.2 supercharged ZL1. I would love to have a third gen with the modern guts. I feel like that would be super badass. And if I were to have a second one aside from a first gen, it would most definitely be a second gen split bumper. And it would have to have an original. I would love to have either a 396, or, I mean, if you could find one of the 454s. I know you could always swap it in, but if you could find a factory matching numbers, motor and body with the original 7.4 454, that would be my two that I would love.
Yeah. I definitely would have to agree there. One thing I am trying to do as I am, going through automotive schools, I've been wanting to find myself either a first through third gen. I mean, I have my specific years I like, that I would like to get like a 69 Camaro or a 78 to 81 Camaro or an 89 to 92 Camaro, and to be able to take it through school and modernize it, and make it something that can go across the country, be comfortable in, but be able to handle corners and have the power to be able to match with these newer Camaros today.
Beautiful.
But we
absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful. We are at the end of the podcast. We have a quote here from Al Oppenheiser, who is the chief engineer for the Camaro. Says, "There is absolutely nothing that will match the ZL1's level of capability, sophistication, and performance-bred engineering." Take it as what you will with that quote from Al. But it is a very capable car. The suspension that they've put on that thing is amazing. It is very sophisticated, and the performance in it is really, really good. If they could do a couple tweaks to it, I'm sure they could lay down a really good Nürburgring time.
Well, keep in mind, this is a quote from 2012 as well. So this is before they made the perfection that is the Z28. So this was a couple years beforehand. So Al had insight, like very good insight into what Chevy's direction was that they were taking, and not only did they surpass Al's expectations, but they've continued surpassing the expectations every year with the performance that they've pushed. So for 2012, for him to say that about their ZL1 at the time, huge praise that he was giving the brand, only for them to steadily get better.
Yep.
So big expectations. And I mean, when it comes to racing pedigree, Chevy has so much that's still in store to offer. I mean, their sales have definitely had their ups and downs, but they have definitely been on an uptrend. Automotive sales in 2020, as crazy of a year as it's been, have been pretty good.
Yeah.
They're projecting, as opposed to 2018 and 2019, most manufacturers are on track to surpass their sales numbers in 2020.
That's true.
So with how crazy things have been and how wild it's been financially and just how crazy the year's been, most car manufacturers, you can expect to see definite upticks in model versions and performance that a lot of companies are going to be coming out with in the future, including Chevrolet. They will definitely be continuing on with the trend that they're doing, at least just based off of what they've placed out into the media. So you can expect 2021, 22, and beyond. You'll see some pretty cool stuff that they'll be doing. They've actually released a bit of information about some of their new projects that'll be upcoming that are pretty exciting when it comes to the performance side of things.
Yeah, I can't wait for the full details on those to come out.
Slowly but surely. I
We'll
appreciate you guys, though. Episode 2, fantastic. You guys have stuck around, and I hope you guys really enjoy it as much as we do. Nordic, again, I really appreciate you letting me be a part of this.
Of course.
And I do want you to know that I appreciate and believe in what you're doing here, and I got your back 100%.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Really enjoy having you here, and being able to do this with you is awesome. I really hope, that this can continue to be educational for everybody and fun. I want to thank for everybody who is watching live right now or is watching the vodcast, or watches the VOD, I should say, because this is the vodcast. Remember that you can always go back and listen to the audio on Spotify and Anchor FM and whatnot. It's getting released to Google Podcasts and a couple other different places currently as well. But if you like watching the VOD, I know Twitch doesn't keep the VODs forever, but I do put them up on YouTube for you guys if you want to go through and watch the visuals, if you prefer it that way. But if you haven't yet, give a follow or subscribe to the YouTube as well as on Anchor FM or Spotify. And you can expect this episode to be rolling out within the next 2 days on Spotify and Anchor FM and YouTube.
Mm-hmm. And for the complete list, guys, we are going to be featured on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify, as well as the VOD that will be available on Twitch for, I believe, 15 days that you can continue to watch it. And you can find Nordic Hoonigan on YouTube. He'll be featuring it there, like he said. And then both he and myself, you can find us on twitch.tv/Nordic Hoonigan and twitch.tv/The Utah Ranger. If you guys have any questions or maybe suggestions of manufacturers or car models that you guys would like to see, we are always open. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram under our same handles, Nordic Hoonigan and the Utah Ranger. We're always taking suggestions, advice, constructive criticism. Please feel free to give us your feedback, and we will do what we can to make this something special for you guys.
Absolutely. Before we close up Utah, I just want to open it up. I know we both have some viewers here in live chat. If you guys have any questions, I'll give you guys a couple minutes to go ahead and throw those out there if you want. That way we can have a little live Q&A.
Yeah, please, guys, by all means. If you have any questions at all, or even if you guys have any input, if you guys have experience with the Chevy Camaro of any year, make, or model. I know that EFB said that he had a friend in high school that had a 4th gen. That he did say that it was not the most comfortable of vehicles. I can attest to that as well. I had a friend that had a 4th gen that had the 3.8 liter V6, and both front and rear seats, interior wise, were not very comfortable. They were buckets in both front and rear, and as well designed as they hoped that they would be, they were not the most comfortable interiors. adjustability wise, passenger wise, as well as comfort level for both driving and for passengers. They were pretty short term seating situation.
Yeah. Back seats in the fourth gen, forget about it. One thing I will say though, that the fourth gen did decent on the interior was those leather seats that they did. A lot of people like swapping those leather stock seats in good condition into their third gens. Kind of brings it a little bit more modern in those, but they're also more comfortable than the seats that they had in the third gens.
Yeah, I will agree. Their leather package that they did offer were much better than their cloth base seats, as far as comfort and functionality goes, for sure. EFB asks, do you guys now repair stuff like generic fix-it stuff?
What do you mean exactly, EFB?
Yeah, could you... Maybe I didn't understand that correctly. Do you guys now repair stuff like generic fix-it stuff?
I think maybe...
Do you... Oh, do we know?
Oh.
Do we know repair stuff?
Yes.
Gotcha.
I'll let you go first.
As far as basic mechanic knowledge goes and certain upgrading kind of situations, I've got a fair amount of knowledge when it comes to repair and replacement. However, I do know that Nordic in particular is somewhat of a specialist when it comes to a lot of GM applications. In particular, I do know he has worked firsthand on a lot of their 305, 350 V8 model Camaros and Corvettes, and his knowledge when it comes to the side of repair, replacement, and modification is considerably more extensive than mine.
So for me, my specialty is the F body. So first through fourth gen, Camaro, Firebird, Trans Am. That's my specialty, but I feel like I have a pretty good knowledge and understanding of repairing stuff beyond the generic stuff. I could probably tell you how to rebuild a small block 350 very quickly. But the modern stuff is where I start to get a little iffy. Electronics just never were big for me until the past couple of years. So trying to get caught up in fuel injection and ECUs and transmission control units, that kind of stuff. That's why I'm going through school, is to get my knowledge up on those things. But if you were to throw like a carbed 350 or any older car at me, yeah, I could get you going in no time.
Absolute mad lad. Thank you for the question, EFB.
Yeah, thanks, EFB.
Anyone on Nordic side have any questions?
We got Beastman saying he's looking forward to more episodes, which we are too. I'm definitely looking forward to what comes next.
Absolutely.
We've got a couple...
This is actually our longest episode so far, guys. Episode 2. Rock and roll. We are legit 2 minutes shy of 3 hours, guys.
Yep.
Super long podcasts. But you know what? We hold it down. We like to give you guys as much information as we can potentially give. And it's just, I feel like it's a good idea that Nordic formulated. And I do enjoy doing this for you guys. I think this is a really cool experience.
Yeah, I really enjoy doing this. I do take quite a bit of time in putting these visuals together and finding commercials that are good, especially those vintage ones finding ones that are corny, but like bring the information that I'm trying to get across to you guys. I'll spend hours trying to find things for you guys on these and put them together. Let me adjust the way I'm sitting here.
He gives you guys the full experience, not only knowledge and information of the vehicles, but also giving you the feeling and immersion of what it was like to view on television and also be shopping for one of these cars at the time period.
Yeah.
So I do have to give a big shout out to Nordic when it comes down to it, because he does put so much work into these. And I just I really respect him a lot for putting something so well pieced together and being able to bring this to life for you guys. I can't take any credit whatsoever. So Nordic is the madman, the mad scientist behind all of this.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. We have a question from Beastman. What's a major positive standout with the third gen? I'll let you answer your side first.
I think a huge positive standout as far as the third gen goes is probably the fact that they continued bringing the original reliability of both the 5.0 and the 5.7 to the platform. I do know when it came down to some of the electronics that they had to redo for the changes that had to be made between the second and third generation did plague some of the models, but the fact that they carried over the same reliability from the 305 and the 350 into the third gen, I feel like that's a really solid standing point for it. It's the fact that you have two different motors that are damn near bulletproof that you could easily make some changes to get the horsepower back that they had to cut out of it for the third generation.
Yeah.
What about you, Nordic? What do you think?
So I have two major positive standouts for the third gen. One is IROC Z. Need I say more? That is my first major standout, positive major standout for the third gen. The second, the B4C package that they did for Highway Patrol. It was awesome that they were doing that for the Highway Patrol, and those packages in themselves were pretty much almost an IROC. But yeah, those are my two major positive standouts for third gens.
Good point.
I don't know if there's any other questions you guys have. I'll give you guys about another minute or two to see if any more questions roll in. If they don't, then we'll call it that for the podcast.
This has been a good episode, guys.
It has been. It's been really good. Our longest one so far. Wasn't expecting it to go into the 3-hour range, but it is what it is. There's a lot of information came for this episode.
We did get quite a bit of information across, and I do hope that you guys really enjoyed this as much as I did. I know it has been a bit long, and a lot of podcasts maybe don't run quite this long, but I do want you guys to know that we really appreciate everything that you guys are doing for us, the support you guys show. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't have the platform to do this. Yep. So do know that this is something that Nordic and I love to do. It's a huge, huge hobby of ours, and it's a passion that's only growing to become something much stronger and something that we really take a lot of pride in doing.
Yeah, one thing I want to do, the alongside with these vodcasts is when I get a project car, I actually want to stream the things that I'm doing to it so you guys can get the I guess because a lot of people have been asking for podcasts on how to repair certain things or do certain repairs to cars that they don't know, but they want to know, and they want to watch us go through and do that. I think that's one of the things I'll do is when I get a project car is stream all of that and what's going on and what we're doing. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea to do as well. Just like the engine build, changing spark plugs, etc., etc. A lot of people are wanting to see stuff like that. So I think that could be. I don't think that would be integrated into into the Auto Junkies podcast. But it's something that could be done separately that a lot of people are wanting to see.
Definitely. You could even probably turn that into something that could be featured on like a YouTube channel and turn it into clips. That'd be a really solid idea.
Yeah.
It does look like Beastman has another question. One more question. If you were a Transformer, what type of Camaro would you be?
I feel like Beastman, you should know my answer if you've heard me. The beginning of the episode, my dream car, and then throughout this entire episode, if I could be any Camaro and be a Transformer, I would 100% be the 6090 Yenko.
Yep. Mine would have to be a 3rd gen IROC Z.
Yep.
For sure. I would love to see Transformers models of both the 1st gen and the 3rd gen. So we've seen the 2nd gen, and we've also seen the 5th and 6th gen as Transformers. I would love to see the 3rd and the 1st get some love.
Didn't they do a 1st gen Bumblebee?
Negative.
I could have sworn they did.
It started off as a
2nd gen.
Yeah, it started off as the Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah.
And then it scanned the 2nd gen and was the 2nd gen for a while, and then it scanned the 5th gen.
They did a 67 though, didn't they? It was black with the yellow spoiler and the yellow stripe on the front. Am I wrong? I could have sworn they did that. In one of the newer ones.
Oh, you know what? I think you're right. I think you are right. It was black body with the yellow accents.
And the hideaway
you're
headlight.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I think that was in the last Michael Bay movie. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. It was a wide body 1st gen.
Beastman says 67 and Age of Extinction in the beginning.
Yep. That's it. 1967 SS.
So we've got a 1st gen, a 2nd gen, and a 5th.
Yeah, and it was
technically
super clean too.
6th too, right? Almost.
Yeah, they did a 6th gen. 1976, 1967. I'm pretty sure that they did a 6th gen. I could have swore that they did Bumblebee with the stouter, the shorter grill. But yeah, they did. They did it. 2016 Super Sport. The 2016 Super Sport. Yep, so they have done 4 generations of Camaro. Cool. Great point, Beastman. Very well brought up. Appreciate that. I totally forgot about the 1st gen. It was just super brief. Very brief.
Real quick, I just wanted to bring up, if on Twitter, I did share the Yenko that I drove on there. I have it on stream right now.
Look how purty it is.
69 Yenko. Still had the original seats in there. Had a roll cage. Built 427. You can see it had the nitrous fogger system to the carburetor. Actually, no, this one they did electronic fuel injection in it. So they had a Holley EFI sniper system on it. Yeah, 4-link suspension in the rear. It had a whole bunch of goodies there.
That's so sweet, man. I love it. Great episode, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. You guys, big shout out in chat to everybody who's kicked it, everybody who's showed up, everyone who stuck around for a minute and bounced. We appreciate you guys. Every single one of yous.
We do.
And we will definitely see you guys in the next episode. Again, feel free to reach out to us, guys. Let us know what you're curious about seeing, or maybe if you're curious about learning about a specific model. Feel free to shoot us some suggestions, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side.
Yep. We'll catch you guys later. I'm gonna go raid Kumo, and then a little bit later we'll be hopping into some games.
Yes, absolutely. We'll be back shortly, lads and lasses. So have a beautiful rest of your night, and we'll see you guys real soon.